Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Calls. This is the 2024 Worldwide Technologies Initial Research Show. It is great to be back after a few weeks off, to be honest with you. No tournament for the PGA Tour last week, and then I myself took the Zozo off. So it is great to be back in tournament form. We have 3 weeks remaining on the PGA Tour for the 2024 calendar year. So let's finish the year off with a bang. I'm coming off a pretty solid performance at the Shriners. So I am looking forward to finalizing my 2024 in a positive fashion. I hope you have had a lot of success with the Zozo and any other endeavors that you ventured into in these past couple of weeks. We are here for the Worldwide Technologies Championship, so let's get into it. All statistics provided tonight and every night are from FantasyNational.com. It is the best golf analytic tool out there for your money. It's going to make you a much smarter golf gambler and a much better golf DFS player. Go check out FantasyNational.com. You will not regret it. In the description of the video, there are links to all of the social media. First off, my X and Instagram, where normally I post research every Monday regarding previous winners of the tournament, some course information, patterns, and then players in the field this week or that week that match the pattern of former winners. No such research going to be posted tomorrow, since this course has only been seen one time, and that was last year. So we'll talk more about that here momentarily. So no research tomorrow, but normally, if you want to see the weekly research that I do on the PGA Tour, give me a follow at your preferred social media site. X is also where I place my weekly betting cards and top player usage in the DFS contest I play. That comes out every Wednesday evening after the DFS Tactics show. So be on the lookout for that. If you want to see those pieces of content, then give me a follow over at X. And then lastly, for social media, Gabe's handle's in the description. He writes a great article called The Fringe. Really a great way to start your week of preparation. He continues to update you with his own version of research throughout the week. And if you are a subscriber to his article, which is free to do, you're going to be able to join us in his Substack chat every Wednesday evening as we continue the DFS talk over there after calls. You really are missing out if you are not subscribed to his article in terms of the content of the article and our chat over there. So I really suggest you go do that and follow him over on social media. His handle is in the description. Go show him some support. Lastly, we are live. Chat is open. Want to hear from you all. How was your Shriners? How was your Zozo if you played? What have you done in the couple of weeks since? Maybe you've played some football. NBA has started. Maybe you've ventured into DFS basketball. Want to hear from you, all of you in that regard. I would love to be able to shout out members of the community who have had success, regardless if it's golf or not. And then moving forward, what do you know of the course? Its famous architect, as we'll get into. Who do you think has the advantage here? All of that. So feel free to jump in chat. Would love to hear from you all this evening. So why don't we get into it? Let's do our initial research for the 2024 Worldwide Technologies Championship. And we start, as we always do, on a Sunday evening over at the GCSAA Tournament Fact Sheet. As I mentioned in the intro, this course has been seen once, and that was last year. Its inaugural playing. Eric Van Rooyen is our defending champion. This used to be at El Camaleon, which used to also be known as the Mayakoba, the OHL. So this tournament is still played in Mexico, as you can see there, but it has moved from the east or Atlantic coast all the way to the Pacific coast in Cabo. We are at El Cardenal at Diamante in Cabo, Mexico. The architect, as I was alluding to, pretty notable considering this is his first design that has made its way onto the PGA Tour. This is a Tiger Woods design. Started in 2014. As I've mentioned a couple times now, has this is its second year, made its inaugural start on the PGA Tour last year. This tournament, at least for El Cardinal, is going to run through 2027. So we're going to get a good look at El Cardinal for a few years. The course in of itself plays very similarly to a lot of the Caribbean courses, meaning very, very, very wide fairways, 60 yards wide on average, with the amount of winds that they get. Sorry, there you go. Swivel out of the way for you. 60 yards on average. With the amount of winds that you can get in the Caribbean, they have to keep green speeds down. They have to make it very, very easy in terms of fairway width. This is a resort style course, so it is made for tourists and such to enjoy. So very, very wide fairways, very easy course, as we'll see as well. The course is a par 72 measuring 7,400 yards, or a little bit more than 7,400 yards. Technically would be considered a long course per Fantasy National. Not sure I'm going to want to use that filter very much at all. But as I mentioned, with the extremely wide fairways, the slow greens, generally easier. They are also paspalum, which is what you get a lot in the Caribbean. Think Vedanta, the Mexico Open, that's played a little bit after the Masters, is paspalum. Corrales, Puerto Rico, these are all paspalum green courses. And the issue with that is that we don't get a whole lot of data from these courses, since ShotLink doesn't travel internationally. So we'll have to do a little bit of number crunching to try and figure out how we're going to want to focus this week. And that's generally the challenge with these international events with no ShotLink, especially on paspalum, since we won't have any putting data and anything of that nature. But the course in itself, like I mentioned, a fairly long par 72 at 7,452 yards exactly, or to be exact. The stimp listed at 11 and 12, but they were very, very slow last year. Again, with the winds that can happen on these coastal courses, they have to keep the green speeds down. That way they're at least playable. And we'll get into the wind starting a little bit tomorrow. Wind wasn't a big factor last year. It doesn't look to be one this year, but still have to keep it fairly slow. The greens are massive, which is another common thing among Caribbean courses. You think of Vedanta, those greens are pretty darn large. But these are 8,300 square feet. I think these would be second largest on tour behind Kapalua. I think Kapalua has something around 8,500 square feet, if I'm not mistaken. So very, very large greens. You see the acreage of fairway. This is, triple or even quadruple some courses on the PGA Tour in terms of acreage of fairway. These fairways, I can't stress it enough, they are just massively wide. I could probably still find a way to miss them, but it would almost finding a different area code to miss these fairways. So professionals are not going to miss these fairways. You see the acreage of rough, 0. Much like what we saw at the U.S. Open this year, at the Don Ross Pinehurst number 2, the fairway runs straight to the native area. Vedanta is very similar. Vedanta has, a little bit of rough. This generally doesn't have any rough. The fairway will run straight to the native area, to these, native desert and scrubland and whatnot. So no rough on the course, or very, very little. Very few bunkers on the course as well here at El Cardinal. Let's see, 1836, so maybe 2.5 per hole, and a lot of them are protecting the green. One hole with water in play, and then the greens, as I mentioned, are very large and they're very slow, and they're kept that way for pace of play and generally for wind in other times of the year. So there's a look at El Cardinal in terms of a GCSA tournament fact sheet. Again, this is a Tiger Woods design, his first that has made it to the PGA Tour. So no architect filter in Fantasy National for our purposes. A fairly long par 72, traditional par 72, 4 par 3s, 4 par 5s. Very large, I mean extremely large, very slow paspalum greens. And we're on platinum paspalum throughout the entirety of the course. Greens, fairways, etc. Only one hole with water in play. Just extremely wide fairways and very, very easy, as we'll see throughout this week. So there's a look at the GCSA tournament fact sheet. We'll now move to Fantasy National and take a look at some of the players that are in the field this week. As per usual in a FedEx Fall event, the quality of field is generally lacking. There are 4 top 50 players that have made the trip down to Cabo to play. Austin Eckroat is one that is coming to my mind very quickly. The top OWGR player in the tournament this week is Cameron Young. So Cam Young has made the trip. But this is another fall event, as you would expect. So the headliners, if you want to call them that, maybe Harry Hall, Matt Kuchar, Doug Gim, Bo Hostler, Lucas Glover, Adam Svensson. Pretty darn weak field. Cameron Young being the biggest name on the PGA Tour, making the trip down to Cabo this week. If we take a look at in the past 3 months or so, let's see if we can't get to 36 rounds. See how many rounds are 26 from Gim. That'll be fine. So again, some of your top performers in the recency, or in the most recent 3 months: Max Grazerman, Spawn, Matty Schmid, who's been playing very, very well, Lucas Glover, Bo Hostler, Kazire, who won the Procore about a month and a half ago, Doug Gim, Kuchar, Harry Hall, Joe Highsmith. Those are your top 10. Of course, Nico Echeverria coming off of his win at the Zozo. The defending champion here at Cabo at El Cardinal is Eric Van Rooyen. Just a fairly weak field per usual for the FedEx Fall. Before we get too much further into it, let's take a look at the course breakdown. And again, this is only 1 year of data, so it's all we have to go on, but I don't know how much we're wanting to, put all of our focus. We'll put our primary focus here, but I don't know how much we want to put all of it, considering we've only seen this 1 year. With an international event, as I mentioned, we do not get shot link data, so there is no off the tee or approach or putting data, so you will not see that chart. Instead, we have to go straight to the average strokes gained by hole by par. You see, for the top 10s, even though there's 4 par 5s, the par 5s were lacking, at least for our top 10s, in terms of where the strokes gained came. It's actually in the par 4s and in the par 3s. Before I get too much further, let's not skip the scorecard version. You can tell I've been off for a couple weeks, so I'm trying to get back into it here. As I mentioned, pretty darn easy course here at El Diamante. Lots of very, very good scoring opportunities. The par 5 first, playing 2/3 of a shot under par. You see an eagle rate at 5%, 61% birdie rate. I mean, just one of the easiest holes on the PGA Tour, and a lot of great scoring opportunities. The par 5 sixth, probably one of the tougher par 5s on this course, still yielding a birdie at 40%, playing 1/3 of a shot under par, just not a whole lot of eagles. But both par 5s on the back yield an eagle at a decent rate, 2.5%, 3.5%, 8% birdie rate, playing more than a half a shot under par. So all of these holes, all of these par 5s are pretty darn gettable. And My assumption is there's not a lot of strokes gained in here because everybody was taking advantage of them. And a couple of decent scoring opportunities on par 4s as well. We have the short par 4 third, 351, yielded an eagle at about 1.5%. So there were some driving, or players were able to drive this hole somewhat. Good birdie opportunity there. You also have the short par 4 10th. Not as high of an eagle rate, but still played to a third of a shot under par. So 6 really, really strong birdie opportunities here on the course. Whereas if you take a look at the other side of the coin, the most difficult portions of the course, you do have a couple of holes here, the par 4 4th, 483, par 4 8th, at 474, 475, 462. All of these holes, longer par 4s. That's where the challenge at El Cardinal is coming. But they're not playing all that difficult. 1500ths being the highest difficulty. Then you're very quickly getting into the single digits in terms of hundreds. You got a 10th, 300ths, 200ths. So not a whole lot of areas where you're going to get into trouble. It's all about the massive amount of birdies that you, at least the players, got last year. So now we'll move into the strokes gained by hole by par 4s into the par 3s, which not necessarily the most difficult portions of the course, but you're going to have to play them well considering they're all pretty long. Par 3 second at 208, 200, 189, and then the shortest at 154. So the par 3s contributed quite a bit in terms of top finishes last year. We move our way up the leaderboard to the top 5s. Look at these par 4s. Really, really taking off in terms of importance. And then our winner, Erik van Rooyen, didn't really play the par 5s all that well. I mean, he was positive, but not extraordinarily so. It's really in these par 4s. And he happened to play the par 3s really well too. So there's a look at the strokes gained by hole by par. Again, no strokes gained by shot type data with no shot link here. Hole composition, we took a small look at this, but the par 3s fairly evenly distributed. You have that very short par 3, the 16th at 154, and then 189 and 2 above 200. We do have the short, seemingly drivable par 4 at 344. Yeah, right there. We also had one at 351, and that was yielding more eagles than the 344. So interesting to note. We'll see, especially tomorrow on the data dive, where the strokes gained fall in these various hole by pars. Maybe that 351 plays under 350 more often. Interesting to note. But we do have one very short, one really short par 4. A couple of par 4s between 400 and 450, but the majority, 60% of the par 4s measure from 450 to 500. And you're going to have to play these holes well to contend at Vedanta. Again, those are the most difficult holes here at the course. The most difficult, second most difficult, third, sixth most difficult. So 4 of the top 6 most difficult holes are in this range here. And I would venture to say that Erik van Rooyen probably played these lengths of par 4s pretty well. That's what led to his win. Par 5s, 3 of them from 550 to 600. We do have one barely over 600 at 601 on the scorecard. Scoring distribution, almost 30% birdies. Just an unreal amount of birdies were made last year at at El Cardinal at Diamante. Only 10% bogeys, so almost 3 times the amount of birdies as opposed to bogeys. There were few eagles as well, so very, very, very easy. I'm going to skip ahead a little bit. It'll just really emphasize it there. Every single round last year was easy. The greens were medium in firmness. They were very slow. They had to be kept that way. But again, just the emphasis on easy, easy, easy. The cut line last year was -4. Again, just emphasizing the ease of El Cardinal. Erik van Rooyen won at 27 under. So you're going to have to get 30 or so scores under par to contend, or at least to try and match that score from last year. So lots and lots of birdies here at El Cardinal. Driving accuracy, again, a little quite skewed actually because of the width of the fairways. 90% driving accuracy. Greens, again, massive. 8,300 square feet in terms of green size here on average. So greens were hit exceptionally high rate. But interestingly enough, the scrambling was lower than the tour average. So if players did miss the green, they did struggle. And we talked about this a little bit at the Shriners, how even though those greens were easy to hit, if you did miss, the around the green at the Shriners was very difficult. At least for 1 year, it does seem like El Cardinal plays similarly. So we might want to take a small look at around the green. I'm still debating with myself how much I want to factor it in. But certainly for 1 year, the data backs it up that even though the greens were easy to hit, if you did miss them, you were struggling. And then with the size of these greens, 3 putts per round, higher than the average tour event. And that's just probably due to the massive green sizes. Guys hitting greens and yet still 3-putting since they are so far away. There's a look at El Cardinal in terms of a scorecard and graphical view. We'll move back to the players in the field this week for the Worldwide Technologies. First thing we're going to do, again, it's going to be just emphasized over and over this week just how easy El Cardinal is. So in the last 2 years, or 36 rounds, when a round has been easy relative to par, your top performers in the field this week: Harry Hall, Doug Gim, Hayden Springer, Ben Griffin, J.J. Spawn, Patrick Rogers, Lucas Glover, Rico Hoey, Bo Hostler, and Michael Kim. You see defending champion EVR a little bit further down here inside the top 20. There's Austin Eckroat, K.H. Lee, Nico Echeverria, Grazerman, Svensson. So there's a few of the players who have played very, very well when rounds have been easy relative to par. We can take a look at long courses. Not in love with that filter this week. More so, obviously, with the easy filter. But in the past couple of years, on long courses, those defined as over 7,400 yards on Fantasy National, your top performers on long courses: Sam Stevens, Michael Kim, Nico Echeverria, Nate Lashley, Kevin Tway, Doug Gim, Matt Kuchar, Aaron Baddeley, Hayden Springer, Eric Barnes, and Rafael Campos are your top 11, just due to ties, on performance on long courses. Again, a little difficult because we don't have shot link data, but we can make some inferences here on how we think El Cardinal is going to play. We'll really dig into this more tomorrow in the data dive, but just to hit the strokes gained tonight, I don't foresee off the tee playing that big of a factor. You think about the players that were that performed very, very well last year. Your winner, Erik van Rooyen, generally not the best off the tee, or at least it's not his strong suit. He's much more of a short game player. Camilo Villegas, another one of these players that is not known, especially for distance, but keeps the ball in play and really relies on their short game and their putting to carry them. Let me bring up Van Rooyen here. Take a look at last year's Worldwide Technologies. Matt Kuchar, again, this player that keeps the ball in front of him, not known for distance. Justin Suh, probably the longest of the top 5, but not long by any means. Ryan Palmer, definitely not long. Putnam is not long. Hadley. None of these guys are known for their off-the-tee game. In fact, if we take a look at, we'll just take a look at their last 36, so long as it's 2024. And if we take a look at off-the-tee, where some of these players are. Van Rooyen, 24th, a fairly weak field, to be fair. Kuchar, 97th. Villegas, 125th. Off the tee, it just doesn't necessarily seem that big of a deal, Justin Suh. But what you're seeing is putting from Justin Suh. Villegas wasn't all that great with the putter. He just kind of had a bad year. But you see, he's mainly an iron and around the green type player. Those are the guys that performed the best here last year. The notable exceptions, probably Obear and Batia. Those guys are pretty long. They finished at the bottom half of the top 10. So I don't foresee off the tee being a big factor this week. I'll still take a look at it. We'll take a look at off the tee, particularly when it's easy. I think would probably be the most appropriate filter to use. So when rounds are easy relative to par, your top off the tee players are Cameron Champ, or top players in the field this week. Cameron Champ, Toasty, Kevin Doherty, Tyler Duncan, Keith Mitchell. There's Austin Eckroat, Cam Young, Patrick Fishburne, Nick Hardy, and Rico Hoey. But again, I just don't see much here. Do be advised, you'll see some players starred. These are players that are either alternates or, in the case of J.B. Holmes, has decided to withdraw already. So these players are alternates / not in the field. They could get in there with some more withdrawals, but they are not in the field right now. So if you see a player starred, that is what that is indicating. Instead, definitely going to be wanting to look at some approach. So your top approach players in the last 36 rounds have been Doug Gim, Lucas Glover, J.J. Spawn, Nick Hardy, Ben Griffin, David Lipsky, Austin Smotherman, Keith Mitchell, Joel Damon, and Patton Kazire. Top around the green players, Halls, Vincent, McNeely, Hostler, Shelton, Bridgman, Baddeley, Vincent Whaley, Patton Kazire, Joseph Bramlett. And interestingly enough, we do have a little bit of some putting data on Paspalum, but what I'm going to show you is actually strokes gained total on Paspalum. And the reason for that is most courses that have Paspalum, we do not get data for, especially ShotLink data. So I don't understand or don't know why Accordia is coming up. That is the Zozo. Those are not Paspalum greens. I think that's just an input error on Fantasy National's part, to be honest. Cocoa Beach is the host of the Puerto Rico Open. We have Corrales, host of the Corrales Punta Cana. El Camaleon, which was the former host of this tournament, Mayakoba. El Cardinal, where we are. The Olympic Golf Course, TPC Kuala Lumpur. These two are no longer, in rotation. And Vedanta. So I'm going to just click or check the courses that are, I'm going to use both of Corrales because I'm not sure which one it is. The courses that are just consistent on the PGA Tour now. We'll just go last 36 because you got some of these players who have played those alternate field events quite often. Players like Rafael Campos, Rogers, Johnny Vegas. You see several players who are alternates play them a lot. Joseph Brennan, Scott Piercy. So the issue with these courses, as I've mentioned, we don't get a lot of data. We get data from Mexico, Vedanta, but that's about it. That is about it. You see Corrales, we get strokes gained total and par 3s, 4s, 5s, etc. But we don't get any approach or putting data. So any putting data that I would show you would just be from Vedanta, and I don't want to do that. So instead, let's take a look at performance or strokes gained total performance at courses with paspalum greens. It's the best way we're going to be able to do this. It's not a perfect science, but it's what we have. So your top performers in the field this week on courses with paspalum have been Brandon Wu, who has been exceptional at Vedanta, Alex Smalley, Nate Lashley, Patrick Rogers, Nico Echeverria, who won the Puerto Rico Open a couple years ago, Harry Hall, who played very well at Corrales, didn't win, but played very well, Cameron Champ, who's played very well at Vedanta, Kelly Kraft, our defending champion EVR, and Justin Lauer. Those are your top 10 in terms of performance in the last 36 rounds at courses with paspalum greens. And again, any putting we have here, this is putting just from Vedanta. This does not include Cocoa Beach or Corrales or El Cardinal for that matter. It's just Vedanta, so don't get carried away with it. But for those players who have played Vedanta, there's your top putters. All right. Really, only a couple more things we can even talk about tonight. No early look file, considering it's only had 1 year here, so there's no early look file this week. The last thing we'll check, and it was interesting. I was going to go with par 5s, but thanks to what we saw in the course breakdown and how the par 4s, especially for players in the top 5 and EVR last year, I'm going to venture to say that these par 4s, 450 to 500, are probably where EVR made his hay. We'll take a quick gander at it. Yeah, 4.2, he probably led. Close enough. He played the par 4s just generally, gosh dang it. He played the par 4s generally well at gaining 10, but it was really in the 450 to 500s that he performed the best. He was okay in the 400 to 450 as well, but just for tonight, we'll take a look at par 4 performance, 450 to 500 yards, especially since those are the toughest holes here at El Cardinal. So long as it's been 2024, your top performers on par 4s, 450 to 500 yards, have been Max Grazerman, Mav McNeely, Lucas Glover, Trace Crow, Rico Hoey, Henrik Norlander, Daniel Berger, Carl Yuan, Tom Hoagie, and Hayden Springer. Normally, this is where I would go to the tournament history tab or tournament history page view. You can't really go to it because this is including when the tournament was at Mayakoba at El Camaleon. You can sort on this most recent year here, like Van Rooyen, Kuchar, Villegas. I'm not in love with doing that. So instead, we'll just take a look at some of the performances and players in the field that we know this year. So again, Eric Van Rooyen is back, Kuchar is back, Villegas, Justin Suh, Ryan Palmer, Putnam, Hadley. Don't believe Mackenzie Hughes is back. Nope. So Mackenzie Hughes isn't in the field. But there's a look at some of the players, or at least at last year's leaderboard for the Worldwide Technologies. Get a feel for some of the players as we start our research this week on the players that performed well and who we think we're going to want to focus our efforts on as we move forward. Again, I just don't see off the tee being a big deal. None of these players are impressive off the tee. They just kind of keep it in front of them and rely on a hot putter, short game. Ryan Palmer's case, he is more of a ball striker per se. Hasn't been lately, but is not necessarily all that impressive off the tee. So looking at probably a lot of approach, a lot of opportunities. We'll want to factor in some past Palom performances, considering that's how we're going to be able to try and extrapolate maybe some putting data for past Palom. But there's a look at that. I'll leave us off with that this evening. Again, a shorter show, but with no early look file, no real historical precedence for this course. All we can really do is take a look at the course from a GCSA tournament fact sheet and a scorecard and graphical view, and just give us a quick first look at some of the players that we might want to focus on this week, and we'll really dig in tomorrow for the Data Dive show. So that's going to be it for the show this evening. I want to thank everyone for tuning in, watching, listening, supporting the channel by liking the videos, commenting, and subscribing. I always appreciate it. Love what I do, taking a very in-depth look at golf statistics, giving you a statistician and data analyst view of what he sees, trying to help us all win a little bit of money in the process. Myself, I took the Zozo off, but I'm coming off a rather profitable Shriners. I had a lot correct that week, so I'm going to try and keep the momentum going as we reach the stretch drive, if you will, reach the home stretch for 2024 with 3 more tournaments in play. So thanks again for all the support, for all of the wagers that you've made in the past couple of weeks, and until I see you tomorrow night for the Data Dive show, may all your bets be profitable.